Com a president del Futbol Club Barcelona, vull transmetre la insatisfacció que produeix.
At their peak, they dominated European football and produced a system of football no one had ever seen before. But it's 2024 now, and Barcelona is struggling to compete with the big boys. It begs the question, what happened to Barcelona? Honestly, when it comes to Barcelona's history, the story really begins when a certain Dutchman, called Johan Cruyff, joined the club in the 1973-74 season. Up until that point, Barca's history had been tipsy-turvy. After initial success at the start of the 1900s, the 1960s was a dark period for Barca. Real Madrid had dominated and monopolized the league, and they'd only just completed the Nou Camp Stadium, meaning they had very little funds to spend on player transfers. Cruyff's arrival signaled a new era for the club. He became the world's most expensive player after agreeing to a $920k deal to join the club from Ajax. And his arrival began the start of an era that would mark the club for years. In 1979, they won their first European Cup Winners' Cup, and by the time 1988 rolled around, they'd increased their trophy cabinet to 14 La Liga titles. But you see, the plan was for Barca to dominate on a continental scale, and to do that, they needed a visionary. Someone who understood the club and had new ideas to take the club to the next level. And that's when Johan came back. Cruyff again. This time he was back as head coach. And in the 1991-92 season, he won Barca's very first Champions League title, beating Sampdoria in the final 1-0, thanks to a Ronald Koeman goal. The structure at Barca was now emerging, elected heads at the top chosen by the club's socios. Cruyff introduced a style of total football that focused on players marking and making movements on and off the ball. Barca was dominating. They won 4 consecutive La Liga titles between 1991 and 1994. These were the glory days of the club, more like Barcelona 1.0, but it peaked at that. In his final 2 seasons, Cruyff failed to win any trophies as manager. And after a fallout with president Josep Nunes, he was sacked, and from that point on, Barca went into decline. After a brief stint with Brian Robson as head coach, Louis van Gaal came, but his major highlight was the disaster of 2000. The rivalry between Barcelona and Real Madrid had now grown to a global level. They started attracting the best talents in the world, and with Luis Figo, Barca looked like they set to dominate for years. Figo was even one of the vice-captains of the club, and after winning La Liga and having a contract running for 3 years, I don't think anyone would have expected what happened next. He moved to Real Madrid that summer. Under Van Gaal's watch, things were falling apart. The fans were so pissed by Figo's decision to move to their biggest rivals that they started to question the team to the top. And by 2003, Van Gaal didn't just leave. President Josep Nunes left as well. Joan Gaspart became president but only lasted 3 years. The good days were coming though. After Gaspart left, Joan Laporta was elected as club president, and he brought with him a young Frank Rijkaard, looking to bring in young players to the team and make them great again. And it's safe to say Barca bounced back. The Barca team of that era was a mix of homegrown talent with foreign skills. Players like Xavi and Iniesta all became regulars for the first time, as did the likes of Victor Valdez as well. And on the international front, this guy arrived, changed the club. With Ronaldinho playing in his favourite number 10 role and Samuel Eto'o leading the line, Barca began to rival Real Madrid on all fronts. In the 2004-05 season, they won La Liga again. But 1 year later, they were champions of Europe again. It was more than that for Barca. They were thriving. The success was on and off the pitch. Barca was becoming a global brand. The players they had on the field were producing results. And from the academy, there was an emerging talent no one could stop talking about. Lionel Messi was making waves in the academy. But once again, just like it did under Cruyff early on, Barca had hit a peak and started to decline from that. In the 2006-07 season, they failed to win any trophies, and it was more than that. Internally, the club had noticed that its star players, guys like Ronaldinho and Deco, weren't showing the required level of intensity needed to perform for the team. It's almost as if they played whenever they wanted and however they liked. Ronaldinho's attitude in particular was what worried the most. The club feared it might rub off on Lionel Messi, and after a 2007 07-08 season, where they failed to win any single trophy, Ronaldinho was gone. Same with Frank Rijkaard, and the new man at the club ushered in a golden era of Barca football. Pep Guardiola and his initial arrival caused controversy. Pep was the coach of the B team, and his critics feared that because he had no experience managing at the senior level, he wouldn't be able to handle the demanding job of head coach at Barca. But the man who vouched for him was the club's legend himself, Johan Cruyff. Pep had played under Guardiola, so he was no stranger to him. And having seen Pep manage at the youth level, Cruyff knew Pep understood the Barca philosophy and what it meant to play total football. And the bold decision he had taken to let Ronaldinho leave on a free so he wouldn't corrupt the squad, it showed he was bold. So the club in turn decided to put faith in him, and the results began to follow. In the 2008-09 season, the first under Pep, Barca swept everything. They won La Liga, the Copa del Rey, and the Champions League, making them the first Spanish team to win the treble. It wasn't just how they won, but the way they did it as well. The players under Pep all understood the system and developed as a result. From Victor Valdez at the back to Carlos Puyol and Yaya Toure, Gerard Piqué and Dani Alves, they formed the defense and the midfield emergence of a trio that defined an era of football. Xavi, Iniesta and Busquets. So good the ball felt like it was in the Bermuda Triangle loop whenever they had it. Didn't let go. Busquets acted as the anchor for the team. He was unpressable and read the game almost 3 times faster than anyone else. When it came to progressive ball carries, Iniesta was the man. His dribbling skills and low center of gravity made him easily find pockets of space to move into and receive the ball in dangerous areas. Xavi was the one who coordinated in the middle. The string between defense and attack, and up front Samuel Eto'o and Thierry Henry acted as channels of attack down the wings. But they could easily interchange with the diamond behind Pep's new system. Lionel Messi, it's almost as if he had been waiting for a coach like Pep at Barca to take his game to the next level. Messi had clearly shown signs that he was going to the top. He finished second in the 2008 Ballon d'Or rankings, and the following year, Barca's treble year, he was the star of the show. 38 goals and 19 assists in 51 matches, and won the Ballon d'Or later in the year. Well deserved too. No one came close to him. Barca was only getting started. They went on to make it even better at the start of the new season, and by the end of 2009 they made history. They were now officially the first club to complete a sextuplet of winning 6 trophies in a calendar year. They added the UEFA Super Cup, Club World Cup, and the Spanish Super Cup to the treble they had months back. Winning the treble was always going to be hard to replicate, and in 2009-10, while Barca did the double of winning the league and the Copa del Rey, the Champions League just went out of reach this time. They lost 3-2 on aggregate to Inter Milan in the semi-finals. And that summer set up nicely for a rivalry that shaped the Spanish top flight and announced Barca's status as the new superpower in world football. The rivalry with Real Madrid was hitting a global peak. While Barca was winning, Madrid wasn't prepared to sit back and watch the Catalan giants take over, so in turn what Barca did with La Masia and the Academy, Madrid did with the money and the Galacticos. La Liga was officially where football was at now. The league now had the Ballon d'Or winners from the past 3 years in Lionel Messi for Barcelona and Cristiano Ronaldo for Real Madrid. And on the touchline, while Pep rocked up for Barcelona every weekend, Madrid responded by appointing the man who stopped him from winning back-to-back Champions League titles, Jose Mourinho. Pep and Mourinho went way back. They used to work at Barca as youth coaches in the late 90s and early 2000s. And now the stage was all set for an exciting period of El Clasico rivalry. Truth is, Barca and Real Madrid dominated football. Barca largely. In the Spanish World Cup winning team of 2011, there were 8 players from Barca on the team. Carlos Puyol, Gerard Piqué, Victor Valdez, David Villa, Pedro, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets. 8. In the first meeting of both teams in the 2010-11 El Clasico, the build-up to the match was intense. The hype around it suggested it was going to be a close game, but the result was a one-way show. A 5-0 win, and this set the tone for Barca's performances that season. They were miles ahead of everyone else. The possession stats largely increased from 2009. Barca were now averaging almost 70% possession against their opponents, and in the goal-scoring department, they were putting teams off with ease. Simply put, Barca was fantastic that season. Another La Liga title in the back, and the Champions League final against Manchester United at Wembley, the Catalans dominated from start to finish. They were so good that even Sir Alex had to admit he had never seen anything like that team. Pepe had created a footballing dynasty, but again, all good things had to come to an end, and at the end of the 2011-12 season, Pep wanted out. The reasons were clear. 2 years earlier in 2010, Joan Laporta had stepped down to allow new president Sandro Rosell to take charge as president. And let's just say he wasn't exactly happy with the change. And the quest for a new adventure made sense to him at that point, so he bid farewell to Barca, leaving behind a team that was undoubtedly the best in the world. They were expected to struggle after Pep left, but the foundations he had left behind made them dominate for a while. In 2012-13, under Tito Villanova and later Tata Martino, Barca won the league with 4 games left only. But it was in 2014 where the cracks started to show. That season, Barca had a strange campaign. Madrid ended their 12-year wait for a Champions League title, Atletico Madrid won La Liga, and in the Copa del Rey final, a Gareth Bale solo stunner helped Madrid win the domestic cup. To leave Barca without a major trophy that season. At the top of affairs, it wasn't smooth as well. President Sandro Rosell stepped down and was replaced by Josep Maria Bartomeu on accounts of mismanagement of funds in the Neymar transfer. And by the time 2014-15 rolled around, Barca was determined to get back on track. Luis Enrique was appointed as head coach that season, and what he had built in attack was a South American trio ready to explode. Luis Suarez, Liverpool's goal machine from their almost title-winning season, had joined the team. Neymar was finally setting in and adjusting to life at the club, and Messi needed to get back to his best again. All three already showed they were in sync from day one. First thing they did was subscribe to Mr. Football so people knew they weren't playing. And in return, they fired Barca to another treble, a second one in 6 years. They were back. The MSN trio scored over 120 goals that season. It was sensational watching them play. From defense to attack, Barca looked like a unit, but you see guys, 2015 was where it peaked, because after that, the cracks I talked about earlier, well, they had started to deepen. 2015-16 was fairly alright. They did win La Liga again, the UEFA Super Cup, and the Club World Cup that year, but in the Champions League they got knocked out by Atletico Madrid, and it was a repeat of the same thing at the same stage the following season. This one was even worse. Madrid won La Liga, became the first team to win back-to-back Champions League titles, and after 2017, a key part of the MSN wanted out. Neymar struck a world record deal to move to PSG, and from that point on, they quite simply never recovered. Replacing Neymar became the new mission, and it was a failure from the on. Luis Enrique had left at this point as well. Ernesto Valverde was the new man in charge, and it became his mission to guide Barca back to the top of both domestic and European competitions. In his first season, Barca became La Liga champions again, but this was overshadowed by the fact that Madrid had done the treble in the Champions League. 3 in a row. In trying to replace Neymar, Barca had splashed over $250 million in signing both Felipe Coutinho and Ousmane Dembele from Liverpool and Borussia Dortmund respectively, and both players weren't working out. 2018-19 now, and Barca looked to be on the rise again. Under Valverde in the final stretch of the season, they were in for another treble again. They secured the league title, beat Liverpool 3-0 in the Champions League semi-final first leg, and were in the Copa del Rey final. What happened next, though, was a collapse no one can explain till this day. They went to Anfield and lost 4-0, losing 4-3 on aggregate, and lost the Copa del Rey final at the Nou Camp to Valencia. Incredible. The defeat had started an inquest at the club, and by 2019-20, that inquest was in full flow, after the most humiliating defeat in the club's history. The world was in lockdown mode, but Barca were trying to rebuild. After the disappointment of 2019, Barca started the 19-20 season with a mission to improve on last season's performances and compete on all fronts. So when COVID hit and the league took a break, all of that was on pause. Football resumed later on in the year, and Barca's first major test of the season was a Champions League quarter-final match against Bayern Munich. And what happened that evening in Lisbon remains one of the darkest days in the club's history. They got beat 8-2. A Barcelona team with Lionel Messi in it got beat 8-2. The signs were no more cracks now, everyone could see them. Barca had fallen off, and Messi alone couldn't carry the team any longer. You see guys, this defeat did more damage to the club than everyone initially thought. Valverde was sacked as coach in January, to be replaced by Quique Setién, But Koeman and the Dutchman's first assignment was to try and save the club. It was so bad that after that season Messi wanted out. The unthinkable was happening. Messi had taken enough. This wasn't the system he grew up with at La Masia. The chopping and changing of personnel in the coaching department didn't show any form of stability, and now he wanted to leave. The club managed to beg him to stay for the 2020-21 season, but this one proved to be the final blow. The season that witnessed the complete Barcelona collapse. Nothing to show for it. Lost out on the league to Atletico Madrid, got dumped by PSG in the Champions League round of 16, and internally the club was struggling. Like every other club in the world at that point, Barca was feeling the effects of COVID on the finances. The books weren't adding up, and this led to more eyes on the club's finances to try and balance the records. But the discoveries that were made were completely shocking. For years, President Bartomeu and some of the club's staff had been involved in some shady deals that messed with the finances. They'd taken out of the funds for the team, and now the club was struggling. Messi became the center issue now. His contract was up and he wanted to renew, but the problem now was that they didn't have enough money as a club to renew Messi's contract. Bartomeu was already disgraced, but out of fear of what could happen next, he resigned, and Barca turned to the one man they felt would be able to save the situation and find a way to make Messi stay. Joan Laporta returned for a second spell as president, and he tried everything to see how the team could register Messi and pay his wages for the upcoming season. But all of that effort was a waste. It unfortunately couldn't happen, and to the shock of the whole world, the best player in the club's history was going to have to say goodbye. Messi left. Post-Messi, Barca struggled. The 2021-22 season belonged to Madrid, another league title and the 14th Champions League. While as for Barca, they sacked Ronald Koeman and brought in another club legend, with a vision to rebuild the team. Xavi was here. The appointment of Xavi was a positive step in trying to get the team back in shape, and in his first full season as manager, he more than did okay. Barcelona won the league in 2022-23, and even though the performances in the Champions League weren't that great, there were signs of a growing team in there. Xavi had stuck to the Barca traditions of promoting La Masia's talent as opposed to signing the big money names. Under him, players like Marc Guéhi, Fermin Lopez and Lamine Yamal all made their debuts. In the previous season, Barca unfortunately couldn't replicate the same energy they had the season before. Madrid bounced back again, did another double of winning the league and the Champions League, and Barca had nothing to fight for. The season reached a boiling point midway. Xavi announced that the pressures of the job were too much, and he was going to leave, only for him to change his mind and stay, and get sacked after the end of the season. Joan Laporta has made it clear that Barca will one day be great again. They've already started making plans for the team remodel and restructure. Barca played the whole of last season at the Luis Company Stadium when it came to home matches, and the reason for that was because the Nou Camp is currently under construction. So what the heck happened to Barca? Well, if I'm being honest, it all boils down to one thing. The mismanagement of funds at the top ultimately led to the club collapsing. See, after Laporta left in 2010, the guys that came after him all had enormous amounts of scandals linking them to money laundering schemes at the club. Sooner or later, the gaps in the finances were going to become public, and now they have been. The club's finding it hard to cope. Another reason for the downfall has to be the questionable transfers, especially since the club tried to replace Neymar. The players that came in after this all came with questionable price tags. Felipe Coutinho for $142 million, Ousmane Dembele for $117 million, Antoine Griezmann for $120 million. It just felt like Barcelona had no strategy when going into negotiating transfers. They just paid whatever amount the club asked for, no questions. Despite all of this, Barca looks to be on a path with Laporta. Don't know if it's safe to call it the right one. I mean, after sacking Xavi, they did turn to Hansi Flick next, the same guy that beat them 8-2 in 2020. So that says something. But on the whole, the curve of the recent years showed the team might be heading back to the top in a couple of years. The core of the team looks young now. Players like Lamine Yamal, Pedri and Gavi, all having played at the academy level for Barca, understand what it means to play for the team. Add this to old-timers like Sergi Roberto and Ter Stegen on the roster to add the experience needed. When it comes to Ter Stegen in particular, he's an OG. He's been around long enough to become one of the captains of the club, and is still making crazy saves, like the one he did in 2019, that earned him a super cool nickname, or the one from 2050. that got voted as the goal of the century. Want to see where that ranks on the list of all-time saves? Click the next video to find out the 7 craziest saves in football history.